The grand amphitheater on Keth Prime stretched across 5 miles of polished black stone, a monument to Kethran dominance over 12 conquered worlds and 43 subjugated species. Sarah Chen stood on the execution platform in the center of that vast space, her hands bound behind her back with energy shackles that hummed with barely contained power. She was 17 years old. Around her, 300,000 Kethrans filled the amphitheater seats, their crystalline skin reflecting the harsh lights that illuminated the platform from every angle. Billions more watched across the Dominion through holographic broadcasts that reached every occupied world, every colony, every station where conquered peoples lived under Kethran rule. The Kethrans had designed this spectacle carefully, wanted everyone to see what happened to those who defied the natural order. As they called it, the natural order, according to Kethran philosophy, placed their species at the apex of civilizational. Other species existed to serve them, or be eliminated. Sarah had violated that order by helping 3 Jalvian children escape from mining complex 7 on the moon of Tertius IV. The children were 8, 10, and 12 years old. They had been assigned to, or extraction, their small bodies ideal for crawling through narrow tunnel spaces that adult workers could not reach. Sarah had hidden them in a supply transport and sent them to a rebel safe house 3 systems away. The Kethrans discovered the escape within hours. They traced the route back to Sarah through surveillance footage and arrested her in the human residential sector of New Shanghai colony. That had been 6 months ago. Since then, Sarah had been held in a detention facility while Kethran prosecutors built their case. The trial lasted 3 days. Verdict was predetermined now. She stood on the platform, wearing a plain gray prisoner's uniform, her dark hair cut short, her face calm despite everything. The executor approached from the north entrance of the amphitheater. He was a high-ranking Kethran official named Dexler. His crystalline skin, a deep purple that indicated noble birth and military achievement. He carried the neural disruptor in both hands, holding it like a sacred object. The crowd fell silent as he ascended the steps to the platform. Human-designated Sarah Chen. Dexler's voice boomed through amplification systems that carried his words to every corner of the amphitheater and across the broadcast network. You have been found guilty of insurrection against the natural order, of interfering with lawful Kethran labor operations, and of corrupting inferior species with dangerous concepts of equality and autonomy. Sarah said nothing. She simply stared at the primary camera drone that hovered 10 feet in front of her face somewhere far away. She knew her father was watching. Admiral James Chen commanded what the Kethrans believed was a destroyed fleet, wiped out 15 years ago during Earth's failed defense against the Dominion's invasion force. Sarah knew better. She had known the truth since she was 12 years old, when her mother told her the real story before dying from a disease the Kethrans refused to treat in human populations. Invasion had been real, the defeat had been real, but the surrender had been theater. Humanity had chosen to appear broken while building something the Kethrans could not imagine. Do you have final words? Dexler asked. Following the traditional execution protocol. Sarah smiled. It was not a happy smile or a frightened smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would soon cease to be secret. You have 8 minutes, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the amphitheater and through every broadcast receiver in the Dominion. Dexler's crystalline features shifted. In what might have been confusion or contempt, the ravings of a primitive species, he announced. To the crowd, observe how humans cling to irrational hope even in the face of inevitable justice. He activated the neural disruptor. The device hummed to life, its core glowing with lethal energy. Sarah closed her eyes. She thought of her father. Somewhere in the deep dark between stars, she thought of her mother. Dead 5 years now, she thought of the 3 Jalvian children, who were safe because she had chosen to act. The neural disruptor fired. The beam struck Sarah's chest and spread through her nervous system. In microsecond was no pain. The device was designed to disrupt neural function instantly, causing immediate brain death before pain receptors could fire. Sarah Chen died at 14:22 Universal Standard Time. Her body collapsed onto the platform, the crowd erupted in a mixture of approval and silence. Some Catherines believed executions were necessary. Demonstrations of power others attended out of obligation or morbid curiosity. BROADCAST continued for another 5 minutes, showing Sarah's body from multiple angles, while Vexler delivered a speech about the importance of maintaining order and hierarchy in civilized space. Then the feeds cut to the regular programming schedules on a dozen worlds. Life continued as Normacathron merchants conducted business Kethron. Families gathered for evening meals Skithron. Military officers reviewed deployment schedules and patrol routes. None of them knew what was coming 8 light minutes away, far beyond the range of any Kethron sensor array. Admiral James Chen sat in the command chair of the UENS Retribution. His ship was the flagship of a fleet the galaxy believed no longer existed around him. 300 warships held position in perfect formation. Every crew member, every Marine and pilot and engineer was a volunteer of a single one had lost someone to Kethran brutality. Chen watched his daughter die on a screen. The signal had taken 8 minutes to reach him, traveling at light speed. Across the vast distance between Keth Prime and the fleet's hidden position, ran down his weathered face. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair with enough force to make his knuckles weight around him. The bridge crew sat in absolute silence. They had all known this moment would come. The plan had been in place for years. Sarah had volunteered for her role. She had known it would end this way. She had insisted on it, Dad. She had told him 3 years ago during their last secure communication, "We need something that will unite every human. Every agent, every sleeper cell across all 12 worlds. We need them to know it's real. We need the Kethrans to show the galaxy exactly who they are," Chen had argued. He had raged. He had begged, but Sarah had inherited his stubbornness and his strategic mind in the end. He had agreed because he knew she was right now. She was gone now. It was time, Admiral. Chen wiped his eyes. He straightened in his chair when he spoke. His voice was steady and cold. "All ships. Execute protocol reckoning. Light them up across the fleet." Weapons systems activated. Engines roared to life. Faster than light drives spun up too. Operational power 300 human warships. Prepared to drop out of hiding and into history. The Kethran Dominion had 8 minutes left to exist. They would not know it until the fire reached them. The countdown began at exactly 14:22. Universal Standard Time 8 minutes until the light from Sarah's execution reached the Kethran homeworld. 8 minutes until every person on Keth Prime would see what their government had done. 8 minutes until humanity stopped pretending. Admiral James Chen stood from his command chair and walked to the forward viewing port of the Retribution behind him. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. Systems that had been dormant for 15 years came online one by one. Weapon arrays, charge shield generators hummed. 2 full-power navigation computers calculated jump coordinates for 300 ships simultaneously. Chen stared out at the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, 8 light minutes away, his daughter's body lay on a platform surrounded by aliens who believed humans were a conquered species. Kethrans had made many mistakes over the past 15 years. Their greatest mistake was believing humanity's surrender was genuine when the Kethran invasion fleet had arrived in Earth's home system 15 years ago. They had expected an easy conquest. Humanity had been a young spacefaring species with only 17 colony worlds and a modest defense fleet. Kethrans had subjugated dozens of such species before, but humans had fought with a ferocity that surprised them for 6 months. Human ships had harassed Kethran supply lines, conducted guerrilla raids, and refused every offer of conditional surrender. The Kethrans had responded by destroying 3 human colonies. Completely 2 billion people died in those attacks. Admiral Chen had commanded the defense fleet during those terrible months he had watched colonies burn. He had received desperate transmissions from worlds under bombardment. He had been forced to make impossible choices about which worlds to defend and which to abandon. Finally, the human government on Earth had contacted the Kethrans and offered unconditional surrender. Terms were harsh. Partial human military forces would be disbanded. All human colonies would accept Kethrin Governor's humans, would be integrated into the Dominion. As a laborer species, Admiral Chen had been ordered to bring his fleet to Earth and oversee the decommissioning of all military vessels. He had done exactly that tour, so the Kethrins believed the truth was more complex 3 days before the official surrender. Chen had received encrypted orders from the deepest levels of human government. The surrender would be real, the occupation would be real. Suffering would be real, but humanity would not actually give up. Instead, they would disappear, every destroyed. Ship would be secretly moved to hidden shipyards in the outer dark. Every executed officer would be smuggled to those same shipyards. Every lost colony ship would join a shadow fleet for 15 years. Humanity would endure Kethrin occupation while secretly building the largest war machine in human history. The plan required sacrifice. It required patience. It required people to die and suffer and live under oppression while knowing that help was coming. Admiral Chen had accepted the mission. He had taken his fleet into the dark spaces between stars, where no Kethrin sensor could detect them. He had spent 15 years building and planning and waiting. During those years, human agents had infiltrated every level of Kethrin society. They worked as janitors in government buildings. They served as technicians maintaining military computers. They lived as ordinary laborers, while secretly mapping Kethrin infrastructure and finding weaknesses. Some agents spent a decade in deep cover, some married, and had children to maintain their disguises. Some died without ever seeing the plan come to fruition, but they had built a network, and that network had given humanity everything it needed to destroy the Kethrin Dominion in a single coordinated strike. Chen checked the countdown. 6 minutes remained around him. Bridge officers reported readiness, weapons hot. Admiral navigation locked, all ships report green status. Sleeper cells acknowledge activation codes. Chen nodded. He had reviewed the plan thousands of times. He knew every detail, every contingency, every possible outcome. In 6 minutes, 300 human warships would simultaneously drop out of faster-than-light travel in orbit around 12 Kethrin worlds at the same moment. Thousands of human agents would activate prepositioned weapons and begin sabotage operations. Every target had been selected carefully. Every strike had been planned to minimize civilian casualties while destroying Kethrin military capability. This was not genocide. This was not revenge. This was justice delivered with surgical precision, Admiral, his executive officer said quietly. Final authorization required. Chen turned from the viewport. He looked at the woman who had served as his second-in-command for 12 years. Commander Sarah Okonkwo was 43 years old. Her husband had died in the initial Kethrin invasion. Her 2 children had been taken for labor assignment and died in a mining accident on Tertius. Ivy, she had every reason to want revenge. Instead, she wanted justice confirmed. Chen said, execute protocol reckoning on my mark. He returned to his command chair and brought up a tactical display. Showed the positions of all 300 ships in the fleet. A ship was crewed by volunteers. Each crew member had passed rigorous psychological screening to ensure they could follow orders even when rage and grief demanded revenge. Humanity had learned hard lessons about war over its bloody history. They knew that becoming monsters to fight monsters led only to more monsters, so they had chosen a different path. They would strike hard. They would strike fast. They would destroy the Kethron military and government, but they would not slaughter civilians. They would not destroy cities. They would not become the thing they hated for minutes. The navigation officer announced. Chen thought about Sarah. His daughter had been 7 years old when the Kethrins invaded. She had grown up under occupation, watching humans be treated as inferior beings. She had seen her mother die from a preventable disease. She had lost friends to labor accidents and Kethrin brutality, and she had volunteered to be the spark that would ignite the rebellion. I need to do this, Dad. She had told him during their final conversation. I need them to show the galaxy what they really are. When people see them execute a 17-year-old girl for helping children escape slavery, they'll understand. They'll know why we're doing this. Chen had tried to argue, but Sarah had her mother's determination. In his tactical mind, she was right. The galaxy needed to see Kethrin cruelty clearly. They needed to understand that humanity's response was justified. 3 minutes. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of systems and the occasional status update. Every person present knew what was about to happen. They had trained for this moment. They had waited for this moment. Now it was finally here. Chun activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His face appeared on screens aboard every ship. 300 captains and 90,000 crew members listened. 15 years ago, the Kethrans invaded our home. Chen said they killed billions of our people. They enslaved the survivors. They told us we were inferior, that we existed only to serve them. We accepted their occupation. We bowed our heads. We appeared broken. But we never surrendered for 15 years. We have prepared for this moment today. Show them what humanity truly is. We are not a species of slaves. We are not inferior. We are the ones who turn patience into power in 2 minutes. We will strike. Remember your training. Remember the rules of engagement. We destroy military targets only. We minimize civilian casualties. We are not like them. We are better. For Sarah Chen and every human who died under Kethron rule, for every species the Kethrons have enslaved for justice, execute the channel closed. Chen gripped his armrests. The countdown reached 0300 human warships engaged their faster-than-light drives. Simultaneously, space twisted and bent around them. They vanished into the void destination. Keth Prime and 11 other Kethran core worlds. Time to target. 90 seconds. The Kethran Dominion had 90 seconds left before everything changed. At exactly 14:30 Universal Standard Time, the Kethran Dominion ceased to exist as a functional empire in Keth Prime. The day had been proceeding normally after Sarah Chen's execution. Government officials returned to their offices. Military commanders reviewed patrol schedules. Civilians went about their business in the crystalline towers that dominated the capital city. Then the ground began to shake deep beneath the Hall of Hierarchs, where the Kethran ruling council met to govern their empire. A fusion device activated had been placed there 9 years earlier by a human maintenance worker named Marcus Webb. Had spent 7 years working in the building's lower levels, slowly mapping the foundation structure and identifying the optimal placement point. He had assembled the device over 3 years from components smuggled in piece by piece. 2 years ago, he had activated the device and set it to standby mode, waiting for a signal. At 14:30, the signal came. Webb was 3 systems away when the device detonated. The Hall of Hierarchs disintegrated in a flash of fusion fire. Explosion was carefully calibrated to destroy the building completely while minimizing damage to surrounding structures. 3,000 Kethron officials died instantly around the planet. Similar explosions destroyed government centers, military headquarters, and communication hubs. Very detonation had been planned with excruciating precision. Human agents had spent years identifying targets that would cripple Kethron command and control while avoiding civilian casualties. In orbit above Keth Prime, Admiral Chen's flagship dropped out of faster-than-light travel along with 40 other human warships. They emerged in a perfect formation, arranged in a sphere that encompassed the entire planet. The Kethran Orbital Defense Network detected them. Immediately, alarms blared across military stations' defense. Platforms swiveled to track the new arrivals. Kethran warships scrambled their crews and prepared to engage, but something was wrong. The defense platforms were not responding to commands there. Targeting systems had been compromised. Instead of firing on the human ships, they turned their weapons on each other. A Kethran defense coordinator named Bextel stared at his console in disbelief as Platform 7 fired a full salvo into Platform 3. "What is happening?" he shouted into his communicator. "All platforms are reporting system failures." A technician responded. "Their control networks have been infiltrated. Override and shut them down manually." "We're trying, Commander, but the lockout protocols are Platform 3 exploded. The blast sent debris cascading into Keth Prime's upper atmosphere. More platforms began firing within minutes. The entire orbital defense network destroyed. At Sylvextel realized the truth to light. The humans had infiltrated their systems years ago. Every software update, every maintenance check, every diagnostic scan had been an opportunity to plant malicious. The Kethrons had invited their own destruction on the planet's surface. Human agents emerged from hiding. They struck power stations with precisely placed explosives. They severed communication lines. They disabled military vehicle pools with electromagnetic pulse weapons. A woman named Jin Park, who had worked as a food service employee at Military Complex 12 for 8 years, walked calmly to the facility's fusion reactor. She input a shutdown code that she had memorized 3 years earlier. The reactor began an emergency shutdown sequence that would take 6 hours to complete by the time Catherine technicians understood what was happening. Military Complex 12 was without power. Its garrison of 15,000 troops was trapped inside as blast doors sealed automatically. Similar scenes played out across Keth Prime and 11 other Catherine core worlds on Tertius 4, where Sarah Chen had helped the Jalvian children escape. Human agents sabotaged the orbital elevator that connected the planet's surface to its space station. The elevator cars fell, but not to the ground. The agents had planned for this. They triggered emergency braking systems at carefully calculated points, bringing the cars to a halt halfway down the tether. Catherine officials were trapped but alive in Nexus Station, the hub of Catherine military coordination for the outer colonies. A human technician named David O'Coffer activated a virus he had spent for years perfecting. The virus spread through the station's computer network in seconds. Every tactical display went dark. Every communication channel went silent. Every door sealed shut. Catherine officers found themselves locked in their own command center, unable to communicate with their fleets or issue orders above each of the 12 Kethron core worlds. Human warships began their assault. They moved with a precision that shocked the Kethron. Military commanders who witnessed it. Human ships were smaller than Kethron dreadnoughts. They were faster, more maneuverable, equipped with weapons designed specifically to counter Kethron shield technology. Kethron admiral named Thoxanol commanded the defense fleet at Keth Prime, had 36 capital ships and twice that many smaller vessels here. Should have been able to overwhelm the human force, but his ships were not responding to coordinated commands. Sabotage had extended to military vessels' navigation. Systems reported false positions, weapon targeting computers locked onto friendly ships instead of enemies. Communication channels broadcast static. Thoxanol watched in horror as his carefully organized fleet dissolved into chaos. Human ships darted through the confusion. Like predators through a herd, they fired with surgical precision. One Kethron destroyer took a hit to its engine core and went dead in space. Another lost its command bridge to a missile that punched through shields. Weakened by human computer viruses, the humans were not trying to destroy the fleet, they were disabling it. Every shot was calculated to cripple rather than kill within 20 minutes. Thoxanol's fleet was combat ineffective. 36 capital ships floated powerless in orbit there. Crews were alive, but helpless. Thoxanol sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed similar scenes around every Kethron core world. Humans had done this simultaneously. 12 worlds, 12 fleets, all disabled in the first half hour. He had spent 40 years in military service. He had studied human tactics during the invasion 15 years ago. He remembered humans as brave but outmatched, willing to fight but lacking the technology and coordination to win. The force attacking him now was nothing like that. These humans had spent 15 years preparing for this exact moment. They had infiltrated every system. They had mapped every weakness. They had turned Kethron arrogance and complacency into weapons, and they had struck with a timing and precision that suggested a level of patience and planning that Thoxanol's species had never considered possible. All ships, he said quietly, stand down, cease fire, and await instructions. There was no point in continuing. The battle was already over on the surface of Keth Prime. The grand amphitheater still stood. Human forces had not targeted it. Instead, a squad of human Marines landed in the center of the execution platform where Sarah Chen had died 8 minutes earlier. They were led by a sergeant named Maria Santos. Walked to the exact spot where Sarah had fallen. She placed a small memorial marker on the stone. It bore Sarah's name and a simple inscription. She gave everything so we could be free. Then Santos and her squad secured the perimeter. They established a command post and they waited for Admiral Chen to arrive across 12 worlds. The Kethron military and government infrastructure burned, but Kethron civilians remained largely untouched. Human Forces avoided residential areas, they did not bomb cities, they did not target civilian ships. Trying to flee every action was designed to destroy the Dominion's ability to wage war while preserving the Kethron. People themselves, this was not an extinction campaign, this was a decapitation strike by nightfall on Keth Prime. The Kethron Dominion had lost its government, its military command structure, its orbital defenses, and its ability to coordinate a response. The empire that had stood for 3,000 years had collapsed in 8 hours, and humanity had done it. While following strict rules of engagement that prioritized justice over revenge, Adam, Jen stood on the bridge of the retribution. Watching tactical displays that showed all 12 worlds, secured his officers, reported minimal human casualties, and Kethran civilian deaths in the low thousands. Mostly from collateral damage, despite all precautions, it was far fewer than he had feared. The plan had worked now. Came the harder part. Chan opened a channel to every ship in the fleet, secure all positions. He ordered establish humanitarian corridors, begin broadcasting surrender terms too. Kethran survivors, and someone get me a communication link to the Galactic Council. It's time to tell everyone what we've done and why. Admiral James Chen stood in the grand amphitheater on Keth Prime. Exactly where his daughter had been executed 12 hours earlier, the sun was setting over the crystalline city. Amphitheater's black stone reflected the orange and purple light in strange patterns around him. Human Marines maintained a security perimeter behind him. A communication relay had been set up to broadcast across every frequency known to galactic civilization. Chan wore his full-dress uniform. He had not worn it in 15 years. The fabric felt strange after so long in the practical jumpsuits of a fleet commander in hiding. But this moment required formality. Galaxy needed to see him not as a terrorist or a rebel, but as a military officer representing his species. The communication officer gave him a signal they were ready. Chun took a deep breath and began. "My name is Admiral James Chen of the United Earth Naval Service," he said to the camera 15 years ago. "The Kethran Dominion invaded human space and conquered 17 of our worlds. They killed 2 billion of our people. They enslaved the survivors today. The Kethran Dominion no longer exists as a functional government. I am broadcasting from Keth Prime. The capital world of what was once a galactic empire. Around me are the ruins of the Hall of Hierarchs. It's destroyed by human forces in a coordinated strike against military and government targets. Across 12 worlds, I want to explain why we did this and what comes next." Chen paused. Letting his words sink in across billions of receivers on thousands of worlds in orbit, automated relay satellites picked up his broadcast and transmitted it through the faster-than-light communication network that connected galactic civilization within minutes. His words would reach every major population center in known space 15 years ago. Humanity surrendered to the Kithron Dominion. Chen continued. "We appeared to accept our defeat. We seemed broken, but the surrender was a deception." Kithron celebrated their victory. Humanity was building a fleet in the darkness between stars. Every ship they thought they destroyed was hidden. Every officer they thought they executed was smuggled to safety. Every colony they thought was abandoned became a secret shipyard for 15 years. We endured occupation while preparing for this moment. The camera feed switched to show footage from the human fleet. Massive shipyards hidden in the outer dark rows of warships being constructed by workers who had spent their entire adult lives in secret training facilities where soldiers prepared for a war that most of the galaxy believed was already over. We placed agents in every level of Kethran society. Chen said they worked as janitors, technicians, and laborers. They spent years, sometimes decades, waiting for the signal to act. Some of them died without ever seeing this day. But they built the network that allowed us to strike at the heart of the Dominion. The feed switched again. This time it showed recordings from security cameras on Keith Prime Fusion. Devices detonating beneath government buildings, orbital defense platforms destroying each other, Qthran fleets disabled by computer. Viruses, human ships moving through the chaos with surgical precision. At 14:22 Universal Standard Time today, the Kethran government executed my daughter, Chen said. His voice steady, despite the grief in his eyes. Her name was Sarah Chen. She was 17 years old. Her crime was helping 3 Jalvian children escape from a labor camp where they were being worked to death. The Kethrans broadcast her execution across their empire as a warning to anyone who would resist their rule. The feed showed Sarah's final moments. Her Standing on the platform, her final words, "You have 8 minutes, the neural." Disruptor firing, her body falling. Chon, let the footage play without commentary when it ended. He spoke again 8 minutes after my daughter died. We destroyed the Kethran government. We disabled their military, liberated 43 species from their rule, and we did it while following strict rules of engagement designed to minimize civilian casualties. The camera showed graphs and statistics. Kethran military targets destroyed. 1. 247 Kethran, government facilities destroyed. 389 Kethran, civilian casualties. 2,891 total Kethran population. 47 billion. We could have exterminated them, Chen said. We had the capability, and many would argue, the justification the Kethrans destroyed 3 of our worlds completely. They killed billions. They enslaved the survivors. But we chose a different path. We chose to be better than them. We targeted only military and government infrastructure. We avoided civilian areas. We did not bomb cities or massacre populations. This was not genocide. This was justice. The broadcast switched to show live feeds from all 12 Kethran core worlds. Human forces maintained security perimeters around government and military sites. But Kethran? Civilians moved freely. Hospitals were operating. Food distribution continued. Power had been restored to residential areas to the species formerly enslaved by the Kethran Dominion. Chen said, "You are now free. Human forces will maintain order during the transition. But we are not your new masters. We are your liberators. Each of your worlds will govern itself. We will help you establish the infrastructure and security you need. Then we will leave to the Kethran people," he continued. "Your government made you complicit in terrible crimes. But we do not hold every individual responsible for the actions of your leaders. Your empire is finished, but your species will survive. What happens next will be decided not by humanity alone, but by all the species affected by Kethran rule." Chen paused. This next part was critical. "I am calling for the formation of a tribunal," he said. "Representatives from every species oppressed by the Kethran Dominion will gather to judge the crimes committed and determine appropriate consequences. Humanity will enforce whatever verdict the tribunal reaches. This is not about revenge. This is about justice through consensus." The announcement shocked the galactic community. Powerful empires that had been preparing diplomatic responses to what they assumed would be a human power grab suddenly found themselves uncertain. The Jalvian Union, whose territory bordered former Kethran space, had expected humanity to simply replace the Dominion as the dominant power. The Draxian Confederacy, a collection of militaristic species, had been preparing for a potential conflict with an aggressive human empire. The merchant guilds, who profited from Kethran trade, had been calculating how to negotiate favorable terms with the new human overlords. None of them had expected this. Admiral Chen was not claiming conquest. He was offering justice to the Galactic Council, Chen said. Addressing the loose organization that theoretically governed relations between major powers, humanity requests recognition as a sovereign species with full rights under galactic law. We also propose the formation of a new mutual defense coalition. Any species that wishes to join will be protected from aggression and occupation. The coalition will have no central authority. Each member world will govern itself. But we will stand together against any force that seeks to subjugate others. Humanity offers to serve as guarantor of this coalition. But only if other species agree to join. We will not impose our will. We ask for partnership, not submission. The broadcast ended with a final message. Chen stood silent for a moment, looking directly into the camera. My daughter's final words were not a threat. He said they were a promise. She promised that in 8 minutes everything would change. Humanity kept that promise. We ask now that the galaxy help us build something better from the ashes of the Dominion. Not an empire, not another hierarchy of oppressor and oppressed, but a community of free peoples who choose to stand together. Thank you. The feed ended. Chun stood in the amphitheater as the sun finished setting around him. Human Marines waited for orders across the galaxy. Billions of beings processed what they had just witnessed. Some celebrated. The Jalvian children Sarah had saved watched the broadcast with their parents. Finally understanding why the human girl had helped them, the family wept with joy and grief, mourning Sarah while celebrating the freedom she had helped bring. Some condemned merchant guilds decried the illegal military action and demanded compensation for lost trade revenue. The Draxian Confederacy declared humanity a dangerous species that needed to be contained before they grew to powerful. Some simply wondered, could it be real? Could a species truly overthrow an empire and then offer to share power rather than claim it? Could justice actually be possible in a galaxy that had always operated on strength and domination? Admiral Chen walked to the memorial his Marines had placed on the execution platform. He knelt beside it and placed his hand on his daughter's name. I kept my promise. Sarah, he whispered, now we'll see if the galaxy is ready for yours. Behind him, the communication officer approached Admiral Mamel. We're receiving responses. The Jalvian Union wants to send representatives to the tribunal, so do the Vaxxer Collective. And the Tiaran Alliance. 17 species so far have requested to participate. Chen stood good. He said, contact them all. Tell them the tribunal will convene in 1 month. Someone find the surviving Kethron. Government officials, it's time they faced their victims. 6 months after Sarah Chen's execution, the Grand Amphitheater on Keth Prime had been transformed where once 300,000 Kethrons had gathered to watch executions. Now representatives from 43 liberated species sat in a great circled. The black stone platform where Sarah died had been converted into a memorial gardener. Name was carved into the stone in every language spoken by the species the Kethrons had oppressed. The Tribunal of Liberated Worlds had been in session. For 3 months, every day, Kethron officials stood before their former victims and answered for their crimes. Proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy and like the Kethron executions, which had been designed as spectacles of power. The tribunal was quiet and methodically. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. Defendants were allowed to speak in their own defense. It was not perfect justice. Nothing could undo the billions of deaths, the centuries of oppression, the generations of trauma, but it was something the galaxy had never seen before. The powerful held accountable by the weak. Admiral Chen attended every session. He sat in the gallery, always in the same seat. He never spoke during the proceedings, but his presence reminded everyone why they were there. Today was the final day. The tribunal had heard evidence about the Kethron conquest of the Jalvian homeworld 300. Years ago, they had reviewed records of the forced labor programs that killed millions. They had listened to survivors describe the systematic destruction of cultures and languages. They had examined the legal framework the Kethrons used to justify treating other species as property. Now the time had come for judgment. The tribunal's lead judge was a Vaxxer named Krelixus. Species had been under Kethron rule for 2 centuries. He had spent 40 years in a labor camp before the human liberation. Krelix rose from his seat. The amphitheater fell. Silent, the tribunal has reached its verdict. He said in a voice that carried across the vast space, we find the Kethron government guilty of crimes against sentient life. We find them guilty of genocide, enslavement, and cultural destruction. We find them guilty of violations of every principle that civilized beings hold sacred. He paused. Every being present knew what could come next. The tribunal had the power to order any punishment. They could demand extinction. They could call for permanent occupation. They could impose any revenge they wanted. And humanity had promised to enforce their decision. The sentence of this tribunal is as follows. Krelix continued. First, the Kethron dominion is hereby dissolved. All conquered territories are free and sovereign. Second, all Kethron military forces are disbanded. No Kethron world may maintain offensive military capability for a period of 5 generations. Third, the Kethron people will pay reparations to all affected species. These reparations will be calculated based on economic damage and will be paid over 5 generations. Fourth, all individuals directly responsible for ordering or committing atrocities will serve life sentences in facilities monitored by the tribunal. Fifth, Kethron worlds will govern themselves, but under the supervision of a galactic monitoring board for a period of 3 generations. This board will ensure compliance with galactic law. It will be composed of representatives from species formerly under Kethron rule. Krelix looked directly at the Kethron defendants. Your empire is finished. He said, your military is disbanded, your government is dissolved, but your species will survive. You will have the opportunity to rebuild your civilization as peaceful members of the galactic community. This is more mercy than you showed any of us. We'll offer it not because you deserve it, but because we choose to be better than you were. The verdict sent shockwaves through the amphitheater, and across the galaxies some of the liberated species were disappointed. They had wanted harsher punishments. They had wanted the Kethrons to suffer. As they had suffered but others understood, the verdict was not about revenge. It was about creating a future where such crimes could not happen again. After the session ended, Admiral Chen walked alone to the memorial garden. He stood before his daughter's name carved in stone. They chose mercy. Sarah, he said quietly, just like you did. When you helped those children, I think you'd be proud. Footsteps approached behind him. Chen turned to see a young Jalvian female. She was perhaps 15 years old. Admiral Chen, she asked in accented English. Yes, my name is Vela. I was one of the children Sarah saved from the mining camp. Chen felt his throat tighten. He had known. The children were alive and safe, but he had never met them. She was very brave. Vela said she came to the camp 3 times before she found a way to get us out. She could have been caught any of those times, but she kept coming back. Why? Chen asked. Why did she help you? Vela looked at him with large eyes. I asked her that, she said, when we were hiding in the transport, waiting to escape. I asked why a human would risk her life for Jalvian children she didn't know. What did she say? She said that we were all the same Kethron, human, Jalvian. It didn't matter. We're all people, and people should help each other. Vela reached into a small bag she carried. She pulled out a piece of cloth. She gave this to me. Vela said she told me to keep it safe and remember that someone cared. It was a patch from Sarah's jacket, small embroidered earth on a blue background. I want you to have it back. Vela said. Chun shook his head gently. No, he said. She gave it to you. You should keep it, but maybe you can help me with something, anything. I'm going to propose something to the tribunal tomorrow. Chen said. A scholarship program for young people from all species. A place where they can learn and work together, build something new. Would you be willing to be part of it? Vela smiled. Sarah would have liked that. Yes, I'll help. The next day, Admiral Chen stood before the Tribunal of Liberated Worlds. This time, he was not an observer. He had requested time to address them. Honorable judges, he began. Humanity has served as guarantor of this tribunal and enforcer of its verdict. We have done so because we believe that justice through consensus was possible today. I want to propose the next step. He activated a holographic display. It showed plans for a massive station in neutral space. This is the Coalition Academy. Chen said, a place where young people from any species can come to learn not just military skills or technical knowledge, but philosophy, art, history, science, a place where the next generation can build relationships that prevent future conflicts. Humanity offers to fund the initial construction and operation, but we ask that every species contribute teachers, students, resources, knowledge. Let this be the beginning of something new, not an empire or a dominion, but a community. The proposal sparked immediate debates. Some species were enthusiastic, others were suspicious, but slowly. Support built 17. Species committed to sending students 23, offered to provide teachers 31, pledged resources for construction. It was not universal support. It was not perfect unity, but it was a beginning. 6 months later, the Coalition Academy opened its doors. The first class consisted of 300 students from 41. Studied engineering and spent her free time in the garden that had been planted in Sarah Chen's memory. Admiral Chen retired after the academy opened. He had spent 20 years in military service and 15 years in hiding. He was tired. He returned to Earth and bought a small house near the ocean. In clear nights, he would sit on the porch and look up at the stars. Sometimes former crew members would visit. Sometimes representatives from liberated worlds would come to thank him. He always welcomed them but never sought attention. He had done what needed to be done. His daughter had given everything. Now it was time for the next generation to build the future. 3 years after Sarah's death, Earth's government officially renamed the colony she had lived on. It became New Hope Colony. The mining complex where she had helped the Jalvian children escape was converted into a museum. Exhibit told the story of how one person's choice to help others had sparked a revolution. Children from dozens of species visited each year. They learned about Sarah Chun. They learned about the human liberation, but mostly they learned that courage meant choosing kindness, even when it was dangerous, even when it cost everything. The galaxy slowly changed. Empires that had ruled through force began to question their methods. The Draxian Confederacy, seeing what happened to the Kethrans, started negotiating with their subject species rather than simply conquering them. The merchant guilds, recognizing a shift in galactic sentiment, began enforcing labor standards and refusing to trade with species that used slave labor. It was not a perfect transformation there. There were still conflicts, there were still injustices, but there was also hope. The coalition that humanity had proposed grew within 5 years. 67 species had joined within 10 years. The coalition fleet was larger than the human fleet that had destroyed the Kethran Dominion, but this fleet was different. It was composed of ships from dozens of species. It was commanded by a joint council rather than a single admiral. Its mission was not conquest but protection. The 20th anniversary of Sarachen's death, the coalition held a memorial ceremony in the Grand Amphitheater on Keth Prime 10. 1,000 beings attended in person. Billions more watched across the galaxy. Vila, now 37 years old and a senior engineer at the Coalition Academy, gave the keynote speech. Sarachen was 17 years old when she died. Vela said,